I think we also have to look at the different possibility is that Christianity is more vulnerable than any other religion to this. More vulnerable than Islam. Islam, the idea that the jinn are real it comes more naturally, of course, to Muslims because it's in the Quran, and what the range of manifestations and powers attributed to the UFO aliens, as you point out in your article, the jinn hypothesis, is very much in line with what's always been attributed to the jinn. So this is more understandable. So the term ontological shock has been used in the West to say, people say, if this is possible, then anything is possible. If this is possible, then everything's up for grabs. And if anybody tells me anything, it might be true because my whole idea of reality has been shattered by these amazing revelations. And so God knows what it could be anything. It could be anything, and whereas Muslims are more likely to say, well, we know what this is, generally speaking. This is the jinn. I mean, that's what Jacques Vallée found when he went to Saudi Arabia, that there wasn't the same sense of ontological shock. People said, oh, well, that's the jinn, of course. Yeah. And it's whereas in the West, you have two, or we say the post-Christian West, you have two vulnerabilities. One, Christianity for quite a while has had to exist within a basically materialistic society. So there is the vulnerability of materialism to the belief that these must be UFO aliens from other planets, extraterrestrials, and also the Christian view of these beings, the traditional Christian view, is, well, they are demons, which is a lot closer to the truth. Yet the Muslim sense of what the jinn are, and they're having many different forms, some being faithful, some being faithful Muslims, some being kafir unbelievers, some actually being Christians or Jews. This is a little closer, and generally, the folklore of the jinn, and which is similar to, in some ways, to the folklore of the fairies from Western Europe. I wouldn't say that all of the folklore of the jinn is literally true. The folklore has its own limitations. But in general outline, you're getting a much clearer picture of what these beings are from Islam than you do from Christianity, even though Christianity knows certainly something about them. And to say, Christians would certainly agree with you that, if Satan were to sit down with his, his demonic and human minions and come up with a plan to turn the world into a satanic parody of reality. The UFO myth is perfectly designed to do that. So the Christians do know something, but I think it's important. Something I don't get a clear picture of is how much of an attack on Islam do Muslims feel that the UFO myth is? Because certainly the Christians, the traditional Christians, both Catholic and Protestant and Orthodox, Orthodox Christians, will understand that this is an attack on their religion. And I get the idea that this is not as well defined in Islam. It's not looked at as a clear and present danger that we have to deal with now. Although to the degree that Christianity can be depotentiated and essentially reduced to a caricature of itself, Islam may be next on the list.
Yeah, I was just saying that from an Islamic perspective, there's a number of possibilities, at least two on the table. One obviously is the jinn as a possibility, which is already a part of Islamic cosmology, the tradition. It's already there. The ideas are there. The idea of jinn is very well defined within the Islamic texts. So much so that you can, as in the article, you can draw very clear parallels between the UFO phenomenon and the jinn, and you can show those points of contact. But also there is the other alternative potential interpretation as well, which is that these are extraterrestrial, because there are
Yeah.
verses in the Quran which talk about God's creation scattered throughout the heavens and the earth. So we're not limited as far as the possibilities or the explanations are concerned.
Right.
However, I've been in certain discussions with some Muslims as well, over the past few years, trying to highlight that, look, even though we have multiple possibilities, we have to do the job of looking at, okay, what's the best explanation? Infer to the best explanation based on the data that we have. And looking at the UFO phenomenon, it seems like that the jinn, it's much more closely related to the jinn,
Yes.
extremely closely related to the jinn than to extraterrestrials from another planet.